Something strange has happened to the internet. When people really want an answer they can trust, millions of them add the same word to the end of their search, Reddit. Because they're not looking for another polished article. They're looking for someone who has actually lived through the problem. On most of the internet, people perform. On Reddit, hidden behind usernames, they confess, complain, argue, and tell you what really happened. Over 20 years, those conversations become something much bigger than a social network. They became a living archive of human experience. And now, the world's most powerful AI companies are paying to learn from it. But there's a problem. Reddit is helping train the technology that could eventually make visiting Reddit unnecessary. So is Reddit one of the most valuable data assets in artificial intelligence? Or is it selling the raw material for its own replacement? To understand that, we first have to understand what Reddit actually is. If you have never used Reddit, forget a website for a second. Picture a city, one city, but inside it, more than 100,000 neighborhoods, and each one governs itself. There's a neighborhood for people obsessed with personal finance, one for mechanical keyboard, one for new parents who haven't slept in 4 days. Each of these is called a subreddit. Anyone can start one. You get one citizenship, a single account, and lets you walk into any neighborhood you like. What you find inside depends entirely on where you walked. Different culture, different rules, different people enforcing them. So how does life work here? A post is somebody standing on a corner, asking a question, or telling a story. Comments are the crowd that gather around them. And then there's an invention that made Reddit different from everything before it. Anyone walking past can vote a comment up or down. The crowd decides which voice carry. Good answers climb, bad ones sink and disappear. Do that well enough, often enough, and you build up karma. A public member showing how useful your neighborhoods have found you. You cannot spend it. It buys nothing at all. It's pure reputation, and people chase it surprisingly hard. Two choices made this place unlike anywhere else online. The first one is anonymity. Nobody knows who you are on Reddit. Think about how differently that makes people behave. On Instagram, you are performing for people who know your name. So you post a good vacation, the good angle, the good life. On Reddit, behind the username, somebody will tell you about the embarrassing medical symptom, the money they lost, the $4,000 mattress that turned out to be garbage. Take away the name, and people start telling the truth. The second choice is stranger, and it's the one investors underestimate. Every neighborhood is run by volunteers, unpaid people who write the rules, delete the spam, and settle the arguments. Thousands of them, doing real work, for nothing, because they care about their corner of the city. Sit with that for a second, because as a business, it's genuinely bizarre. Almost everything valuable on Reddit, every answer, every review, every rule keeping a community from falling apart, was made by somebody who got paid in nothing but reputation, which is a lovely thing to build a city on, but it's a nerve-wracking thing to build a company on. So what happens when the volunteers get angry? We actually know, because it happened. But let's start from the beginning. 2005, two roommates from the University of Virginia pitched a food ordering app to a brand new startup incubator called Y Combinator. They got rejected. Then Paul Graham calls them back and tells them to build something else. The check that started Reddit was about $12,000. The site launched so empty that the founders faked it. They made up dozens of accounts and posted as all of them, just so the city looked inhabited. It worked. Real people moved in. 16 months after starting, they sold the whole thing to the magazine publisher, paid roughly $10 million. The founders took home about $2 million each. Reddit today is worth about $32 billion, and that's after a bad week. Both founders have said out loud that the selling was a mistake. Huffman spent the next several years watching from outside as the thing he built got bigger without him. He came back as CEO in 2015 to fix the company he sold too cheap, which brings us to June 2023, and the closest Reddit ever came to dying. That spring, Reddit said it would start charging for access to its data. The technical pipes are called APIs, and outside apps use them to read the site. The new prices were brutal. The developer behind Apollo, the app most Reddit users loved, did the math and worked out it would cost him $20 million a year. His app was dead inside a month. Then the volunteers revolted. The unpaid mayors of more than 8,000 neighborhoods shut them down, locked the doors, went private, some of them for weeks. A city that runs on goodwill found out exactly what happens when the goodwill stops. Huffman came out swinging. In some cases, Reddit simply removed the moderators who were protesting and forced their communities back open. At the time, this looked like a company squeezing its own users and handling it badly. That is not the whole story. The thing that caused the revolt, charging for data, wasn't greed actually. Reddit had spotted something almost nobody had pressed in yet. AI companies were quietly feeding on 20 years of Reddit conversations and paying nothing for it. Reddit couldn't keep subsidizing companies that needed enormous amount of its data. So the fight that nearly killed Reddit was really the opening shot in a much bigger war. A war about what all those internet arguments are actually worth. 9 months later, Reddit went public. at $34 a share. And days before the IPO, it disclosed that Google had agreed to pay it around $60 million a year for data. Why would the most advanced AI labs on Earth pay tens of millions of dollars for internet arguments? To answer that, you need one idea about how AI learns. A language model learns roughly the way a student learns in a library. It reads enormous amount of text, far more than any person could get through. It picks up patterns, how sentences fit together, which facts belong near which, how an argument moves from one step to the next. More reading, more capable. But here's the catch, and everything else in this video hangs off it. A student who only ever reads encyclopedias and textbooks and press releases learns what the world says about itself. What that student never learns is what it's like to own the car that breaks at 60,000 miles, or to take the medication with a side effect the label barely mentions, or to spend $4,000 on the mattresses and lie awake regretting it. Books teach facts, conversation teach experiences, and experience is the part that AI companies were missing. Now look at what Reddit has. 20 years of people troubleshooting, arguing, reviewing, and confessing. More than 25 billion posts and comments, sorted by topic, ranked by crowd vote, stamped with a date, and unusually honest, because nobody signed their real name to any of it. And there's a second thing that matters even more than the size, and it gets missed a lot. Freshness. Old text is a commodity now. Every lab already has the books and the Wikipedia dump and the news archives. What nobody can stockpile in advance is this week's reaction to a new phone, or a new drug, or something that happened yesterday. Reddit isn't only an archive, it's a live feed of what people think, updating every second. And that is the theory. Does the data actually make AI better? Let me build it like a court case. Weakest evidence first. Exhibit 1 is the lab studies. They are narrow, but they're real. Train a model with Reddit data, and it gets measurably better at particular jobs. Reading sentiment out of investor chatter, catching hostile speech, recommending products in conversation. Small experiments, real gains. I wouldn't build a thesis on them alone. Exhibit 2 is more interesting. Call it a citation test. When AI systems like ChatGPT and Google's AI answers and Perplexity show you where their information came from, one website shows up more than any other. Not Wikipedia, not New York Times, Reddit. When a machine needs to sound like it knows what real people think, that's where it goes. And Exhibit 3 settles it. Forget the studies. Google pays around $60 million a year for access. OpenAI pays an estimated $70. And when Reddit decided Anthropic had taken the data without paying, it didn't complain in a blog post. It sued. You don't need a control experiment when the most sophisticated buyers alive are writing checks and fighting lawsuits. So the data is valuable. That much holds up. But there's a wrinkle, and skipping it will make this whole story less true than it should be. One research team trained a model to chase Reddit upvotes to prefer the kind of answer that wins karma. The model came out less factual because the most upvoted answer and the correct answer are the same thing. And anyone who has spent an evening on Reddit already knows that. So Reddit teaches machines how people talk and feel and judge. It doesn't necessarily teach them what's true. Authentic and accurate are two different words. That's not a hole in the thesis. That's just the actual shape of it. Reddit is sitting on treasure. Now look at who's buying. This is the strangest relationship in tech right now. Google needs Reddit. Its AI answers only work if they are grounded in real human voices. And Reddit is the biggest supply of those anywhere. But Reddit also needs Google just as much, because most of the people who end up on Reddit got there through a Google search. Two towers leaning on each other. Either one could drop the other. And there's a trap sitting inside that arrangement. Watch it happen with one question. You ask an AI what the best stroller is for two kids. It answers in about a second. Clean, confident, pulled from thousands of Reddit conversations written by actual parents. Genuinely useful. Now notice what didn't happen. You never went to Reddit. Reddit's knowledge built that answer, and Reddit got nothing for it. No visit, no ad, and maybe, eventually, no contributor. Because why spend 20 minutes writing a careful review if the only thing that ever reads it is a machine? Every track Reddit caches helped train the thing that could make Reddit unnecessary. It's setting the rope. And while I was making this video, that tension broke into the open. This week, the Wall Street Journal reported that Reddit had discussed doing the unthinkable, blocking Google entirely, cutting off access to 20 years of human conversation. And it isn't only Reddit. The Economist, a coalition of the biggest publishers on the internet, is asking out loud whether feeding Google's AI is still worth doing. The president of Reuters put it diplomatically. They're looking at the economic trade-offs, he said. The CEO of USA Today skipped the diplomacy. Enough is enough. The numbers behind that anger are brutal. Pew Research found that when you get a normal set of search results, people click through about 15% of the time. Put an AI overview on top, and that drops to 8%. And the links inside the AI answer itself, 1%. The bargain that built the open web is coming apart, and now everybody can see it. The market's reaction to Reddit threat was immediate. The stock fell 8% in a day, which tells you how investors actually read those two towers. They are not convinced Reddit can stand up without Google, even while Reddit is arguing that Google can't answer questions without Reddit. And that $60 million deal is ending soon. This isn't a 2027 problem anymore. The negotiation is happening right now, and the leak threat walk away is what an opening move looks like. Then there's the second problem, which showed up earlier this year, and which I find most funny in a bleak way. Because chatbots now treat Reddit as the voice of real people, marketers work out something clever and slightly evil. Plan enough fake posts on Reddit, and you can steer what ChatGPT recommends. There's a name for it already: generative engine optimization. One agency owner told Bloomberg, her planted posts have turned up inside ChatGPT's answer within a day. Reporters found companies openly selling AI agents that mass-produce fake Reddit accounts, complete with realistic posting histories, to slip brand mentions into conversations the chatbot trusts. Think about what that means. Reddit's data got so valuable that people started poisoning the well on purpose, because the well feeds the machines. Reddit's answer, announced this July, is to fight AI with AI. Its detection systems now catch about 25,000 spam posts a day. They block 23 million spam views a day. They cancel close to 2 million fake posts a day. Spam exposure dropped 20% in a single quarter, and Reddit locked down parts of the site that scrapers have been abusing. So it's an arms race, and what's being fought over is authenticity itself. The stakes are pretty clear. If the fakes ever win, the thing Reddit sells to AI companies stop being real human opinion. The whole treasure depends on keeping the well clean. Okay, let's talk about the money, because there is something in the numbers I don't think most people have noticed. After everything you just heard, the Google deal, the OpenAI deal, the lawsuit, the spam war, and standoff, here's the number. Data licensing is about 6% of Reddit's revenue. 6. The other 94 is advertising. The AI story is what moves the stock. Advertising is what pays for everything. Before you feel cheated though, look at the ad business, because on its own it's a good story. Last reported quarter, $663 million in revenue, up 69% from a year before. Advertising grew faster than that, 74%. And a company that lost money for the better part of the 2 decades has flipped hard, $530 million of net income last year, more than $200 million in the first quarter of this one. Then there's my favorite number in this entire video. Last quarter, Reddit produced $311 million of free cash flow. The amount it spent on capital expenditure to do that was $1 million. 1. Most tech companies have to build server farms the way railroads had to lay track. Billions in steel and silicon before dollar comes back. Reddit runs one of the biggest sites on the internet for roughly what it costs to renovate a restaurant. Why do ads work so well here? Go back to the cold opening. People show up at Reddit already asking what they should buy. Around 40% of the conversations on the platform are commercial. So an ad on Reddit isn't interrupting your entertainment. It's answering the question you came in with. That's why Reddit's revenue per user is climbing faster than any other major platform, while still sitting at a fraction of what Meta gets per user. If you are bullish, that gap is the entire opportunity. But one thing to know before we move on, and it matters, Reddit pays its employees heavily in stock, over $300 million of it last year. That cost doesn't show up in free cash flow, but it is real, and it dilutes you as a shareholder. Reddit is buying back stock to offset it. Keep that in mind anytime the cash numbers look too good. So the AI treasure isn't in the revenue yet, which leaves the last question: can Reddit actually turn it into money? Reddit has 2 plans. One is negotiation. The other is a transformation. Plan 1 is to repress the treasure. Those deals were signed in 2024, back before anyone knew Reddit would become the most cited source in AI. And as we just talked about, the Google renegotiation is already underway, with Reddit apparently willing to threaten a full blockade to get leverage. The argument is simple enough. Our data is now essential to your product, so pay us accordingly. One Wall Street bank thinks the renewals could take licensing revenue to around $550 million a year, which will be roughly 4 times what it is now. The people on the other side of the table are the most sophisticated buyers in the world. They are building their own datasets specifically so they need Reddit less. And the market's 8% drop this week tell you how nervous the investor get the moment standoff looks real. This is high-stakes poker being played in public. Plan 2 is more ambitious. Stop selling answer to Google and become the place where people ask. Reddit built its own AI search, Reddit Answers, and it went from 1 million weekly users to 15 million in a year. Add the shopping features they are testing, and the throw the question happens on Reddit instead. Question, answer, and ad, all in one place. None of it lessons away. Any plan that good invites an attack. In May, the big one showed up. Meta launched Forum. It's a Reddit clone with Facebook's distribution behind it, which is about as serious as competition gets. Reddit stock fell 6% that day. So is that the end of the story? Here's where the city analogy earns its keep. Meta can put up the buildings overnight. The app, the features, the interface, all of it. What Meta cannot manufacture is 20 years of residence. culture, motivators, and memory. A city isn't its architecture. When Google goes looking for a real answer about a rare medical symptom, that answer is sitting in a 14-year-old community with 1 million members and rules that took a decade to work out. You cannot clone that by a fourth quarter. But let me be fair to the threat, because it is real. Reddit's communities are almost impossible to move. Reddit's casual visitors are a completely different story. Those people just want an answer. They feel no loyalty to anybody, and they will leave without a second thought. So the moat is deep around the neighborhoods and about ankle high at the city gates. Meta isn't going after the residents. It's going after the tourists, and the tourists are where the growth was. So where does all of that leave us? Let's look at both the bull and bear case. First, the bull case. Reddit owns something that gets scarcer every year: verified human opinion. In a world filling up with machine-written text, you can see that scarcity in the citation numbers, where Reddit beats every other source in every major AI product. And scarcity is leverage at a negotiating table, where Reddit is sitting at right now. Leverage strong enough that walking away from Google is a credible threat. Meanwhile, the real business is early. Reddit makes about $9 a quarter from each American user, and the gap between that and Meta is a runway measured in years. International is barely started, and all of that runs through a machine with 91% gross margin and essentially no capital spending. So growth turns into cash almost immediately. If Reddit becomes a place the internet goes to ask questions, $32 billion will look cheap. Now the bear case. Take the story away, and what you're holding is a mid-cap advertising company, 94% ads, trading at more than 40 times earnings, priced like AI infrastructure. Its traffic depends on Google, and Google's AI answers increasingly satisfy people without a click. Its licensing money comes from 2 customers, both of which are building alternatives, so they needed less. American daily users grew 7% last year, nowhere near management's 100 million target. And Meta is now aiming Facebook distribution straight at the casual users who are driving the growth. If AI quietly drains the traffic, while renewals disappoint, this is a decent ad business at a terrible price. And the honest tale is what the professionals think. For the same company, in the same week, analyst targets run from about $75 a share to $320. When people who do this for a living disagree by 4 times, that's not a consensus with some noise around it. That's a genuinely open question. You won't have to wait long for evidence either. Reddit reports on July 30th. So here's my scorecard for that call. First, American daily users. This is the number under attack. It grew 7% last quarter. Re-acceleration is bullish. Flat or falling is the bear case starting to show up in print. Second, advertising growth. 74% last quarter. The valuation survives on numbers north of 40. A sharp deceleration would hurt. Third, and this one just became the headline, the Google standoff. After this week's report, every analyst on that call is going to probe the negotiation. Listen to how Huffman talks about Google. Confident and specific means Reddit think it has leverage. Vague and conciliatory means the blockade threat was a bluff. Either way, watch the other revenue line and listen to anything about dynamic pricing or new customers. Fourth, Reddit answers. 15 million weekly users at the last update. If that keeps compounding, Plan 2 is working. Fifth, margins and cash. 40% EBITDA margins and 300 million of quarterly free cash flow are the quiet numbers that make everything else possible. And one flag worth raising. Reddit has said it will stop reporting login versus logout user after this year. That's exactly the disclosure you want during a traffic war with Google. Less transparency at a convenient moment is always worth noticing. So let's finish where we started. That one word people type into Google, Reddit. That habit was never really about website. It was people looking for the answer the polished internet stopped giving them. Another human being, talking freely, with nothing to sell. And here's what this whole story has been circling. Machines can generate almost everything now. Articles, image, reviews, code, almost everything. The one thing they can't manufacture is sincerity, which makes for a strange possibility. 20 years of internet arguments might turn out to be one of the last reserves of it we have. Whether that's worth about $32 billion is still being written. If you find this video helpful, please subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.